You go first. We're ready to go. You can stay seated or stand as you wish.
I hope this is a precursor. I've been number one in the last event, and I'm number one in this event. I'm the David G. Thunder Thornton. This is the first time I've ever ran for any political office. I was highly successful in my career with Shell. I've been blessed with a family, and I really appreciate the opportunity presented by the leadership to allow us to be here to present ourselves before you. We have probably a smaller crowd. We probably applaud for all the people that go on to their open houses at the school, and that's where we really have to appreciate all the people that are attending that also this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Young.
I'm Dean Young. I appreciate all you guys coming, and I wanted to make sure that everyone understands that I do belong to the NRA, the gun group that does defend the Second Amendment. There's been a little misinformation being spread out there, so I just want to make that real clear to everybody, let y'all know that I've stood for the Second Amendment my whole life, as far as I can remember, and I'll continue to stand for the Second Amendment. I believe we have to defend our Constitution, and we have to uphold all the amendments. The Second Amendment's near and dear to me, and just want you guys to know that. That's why I'm wearing my Second Amendment NRA hat. I belong to the NRA and have for years. Thank you very much.
Thank you to everybody in the Republican Party that made this possible. My name is Bradley Byrne. We've been campaigning one by one, voter by voter, throughout this district for the last several weeks. People say to me while I'm campaigning, you know, I'm worried about our federal government. It's corrupt, it's doing things it shouldn't be doing, it's spending too much money, and I'm worried it can't be fixed. And I say, I believe it can be fixed. Because you see, when Governor Riley appointed me to run the two-year college system, he appointed me to take over the most corrupt part of state government. A part of state government that was doing things it should not have been doing and spending too much money. We cleaned it up, we got it going in the right direction, and we cut $70 million without cutting essential programs. So when people say, I'm worried we can't clean up the federal government, I say, I know we can, because I've done it. And it's that experience that I offer to the people of this district, one by one. We're going to win this campaign one vote at a time, and everybody in this room tonight is the next vote. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Mr. Dyas.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming tonight. My name is Daniel Dyas. I'm a small business owner from the Eastern Shore. Grew up in Baldwin County, have family here in Mobile and Baldwin County, and I appreciate you coming tonight. I appreciate your activity, your political interest. Thomas Jefferson said the greatest threat to our viable republic is a disinterested citizenry. So I commend you all for being interested and being involved. I too believe that we can fix what's wrong in Washington, but I think it's going to take sending some outsiders up there, some people who aren't politicians and special interest people who aren't beholden to special interest groups and lobbyists. I think we need to send some business people up there, some people with some common sense who understand what life is like for everyday Americans. And I'm that kind of guy. I'm a small business owner. I own a construction company in Fairhope. We do construction for a living. And I think we need to send people up there that know what it's like to sign the front side of a paycheck. And I ask for your support. I'm running a grassroots campaign. I believe we can take this country back. I believe wholeheartedly in the founding of this country, and I ask for you to join me for the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyas. Mr. Fincher.
Thank you. Good evening. It's great to be with you this evening. I'm Chad Fincher. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a small business owner. I was born and raised right here in Mobile, Alabama. I could not imagine living anywhere else. I was raised by two wonderful parents that are here tonight, that instilled in me early in life, when you are blessed to live in the greatest country in this world, service should not be an option, but it should be a responsibility. My parents also taught me hard-working Alabama values. Values that was instilled in me that encouraged me to start my own business. And each and every day I walk through the front doors of that business, I'm reminded that government did not do one single thing to create my business. But businesses are created when government gets out of the way. Jobs are not created by government, but jobs are created when government gets out of the way. And as your next congressman, I want to go fight to get government out of the way so we can let our businesses grow and we can create more jobs in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the host. It's great to be a member of a party that prays before meetings. My name is Griffith. I was born and raised here, grew up working at my family's gas station in Mobile, downtown. Parents taught me if you work hard, you do the right thing, you can go far in life. Right now, that American dream, it's not just a stale slogan. It's something I believe in. It's something that's under attack and it's hanging on by a thread. I'm here. I'm running for office because I want to fight to protect it. I want to fight to defund Obamacare and repeal it. I'm going to fight for our veterans and their benefits. I'm going to fight to get our country back on track. Alabama is the greatest state in the country, and this is the greatest district in the country. I'm going to go to Washington and work for each and every one of you. I think too many people worry about the office and the leather chairs. I'm running for office because I want to be a representative, not because I want to be a congressman. I'm going to pass laws that makes every elected official have to live by the laws they pass for the people. We represent, the Congress represents you, and that's what I'm going to do. I appreciate your vote and look forward to talking with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Sometimes you really do get to know a person by the support that they have attracted, and endorsements don't always matter, but sometimes they do. And if you've been doing this for 30 years like I do, you build up trust. So I'm very delighted to have the endorsement of Bess Rich, our local city councilwoman, but I also want to say I believe in the Declaration and the Constitution. And the first right in the Declaration is the right to life, and I have been endorsed by the head of the premier Right to Life organization in the country. The First Amendment, free speech and free association, I've been endorsed by Citizens United that won the biggest case on free speech in the Supreme Court, and the National Right to Work organization has endorsed me. And also the Second Amendment, David Quin, the former head of the NRA, and John Locke, the author of the groundbreaking book, More Guns, Less Crime. And I could go right down the whole 10 First Amendments, but I've got that kind of support because I've earned it over 30 years. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica James. Many of you I know, some of you I don't, but for those of you who don't know me, I was born in Mobile, raised in Washington County by a wonderful family who instilled in me conservative values and personal responsibility. As I've grown up, I went to the University of Alabama and then moved to New York City, where I worked for a public relations firm for several years and had the unfortunate opportunity to watch the second plane go over my head and into the South Tower on 9/11. That life-changing moment at the age of 24 made me move my life into public service versus public relations. I am tough. I ran for state school board last year and stood against the establishment vote that wanted Common Core initiatives in our schools. I fought to try to get the federal government out of our schools. I will continue that same fight, but carry out through other subjects as well. And I would ask to be your first congresswoman from the 1st District of the state of Alabama. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank each of you for coming. What we're going to be, we are now becoming. It is imperative that we bring jobs to the 1st Congressional District. Governor Bentley has done an excellent job in bringing those jobs, but we need people trained for those jobs. Another thing, our veterans deserve us to support them. They have defended our country. We need to now stand up. Our seniors, these days should be their best days, and we should make sure that happens. On my watch, that will happen, because we are what we think about. We are what we do. I submit to you that unless you send somebody that will not be a part of the current status quo, we will not get it done. We are what we're becoming. Thank you.
Candidates for your opening statements. We'll now have our first question. Again, Mr. Young, you go first on this one. One of the most important votes you will cast as our congressman or woman is for Speaker of the House. John Boehner, the current speaker, has at times had his leadership questioned by some conservatives. Would you vote to re-elect Speaker Boehner, or would you support another candidate? And again, you have 1:30. Mr. Young, you're first.
Well, the leadership of Boehner is AWL, excuse me. We've got a situation here where we've got a Speaker of the House that's not doing his job, is not leading in the way he should be leading. And so I'm against Boehner becoming the Speaker again.
It's that simple. We need to find a conservative person that believes like we do, that has the same values that we have, and will lead instead of follow. Because the House, as you know, is the most important division of the three branches of government. They're given more power because they control the purse strings. We have to remember that. That's why they have 2-year terms. That's the way the founders envisioned that. Because they control the money, they have to come back to you every 2 years and look you in the eyeballs and say, this is what we're doing. And we need to have someone up there that will answer to the people. And I could go on and on about John Boehner and what he's done or what he hasn't done, but he's been a poor leader. So I'm not in favor of John Boehner being the next speaker.
Mr. Byrne?
I don't know Mr. Boehner, but I disagree with his decision last January to support the tax increase that was passed. I disagree with his decision the other day to stand with President Obama on this purported raid on Syria. I've been in the legislative body before, and I know you don't always agree with the leadership when you're in a particular caucus. And I've had those moments where I've not agreed with the leadership in my caucus. I don't know who's going to be put up against Speaker Boehner, because that election will come up probably in January of 2015. But I want somebody to lead our caucus, the Republican caucus, who will stand on the conservative principles that have made the Republican Party great, but more importantly, made America great. When I find that person, that's the person that I want to support.
Mr. Dyas?
I appreciate the question, and it's a very important one. I have a unique perspective on this because I was at the Republican National Convention this summer when Mitt Romney was nominated. And what happened down there opened my eyes to the way that the Republican Party in Washington is being run, and it's not in our best interest. There was a big contingent of Southern delegations that was opposed to a rules change that was proposed on the floor of the convention. Reince Priebus, the chairman of the RNC, Speaker Boehner, and others were in support of this change. And this change was to consolidate power in Washington. I think that's against the founders' intent for this country. I think the power should be in our hands and that of the states. So I would oppose Speaker Boehner. What I saw down there was dishonest. It was disrespectful to the delegates who attended the convention. It was rammed through just like what Nancy Pelosi did with the health care bill. And I think we should hold our leadership to a higher standard than that. We should expect good, honest, transparent leadership with our principles rather than those of the Washington politicians.
Mr. Fincher?
Thank you. Like many of you, I've been very disappointed in our leadership in the House. But I also believe we have a bigger problem, that's President Obama. I think that has to be dealt with as well. I think the Republican leadership could have stood much tougher on the conservative issues that represent our party and represent the values that built this party. When I go to Congress, when I have the opportunity to vote for our next speaker, I'm going to be looking for those principles. I want the speaker that's going to be tough on the issues, that's going to stand up, not weak against the president, but going to stand up strong against the Obama administration and to fight back those policies, and that I can be a part of that, and to stand firm, very firm, on our Republican principles. Thank you.
Mr. Griffith, your turn.
That's a great question. Taking up my chair, sorry. That vote won't be until January of 15, excuse me. The first vote I'm going to cast in Washington is to defund Obamacare. That's the most important thing going on right now. We've got to get the regulation off the backs of small businesses so they can create jobs. John Boehner, has he been the greatest speaker we've ever had? Probably not. But he's come from humble beginnings and he's worked his way to Speaker of the House. You got to respect that. I'll tell you who I do like is my friend Powe, who's endorsed me in our campaign. And a lot of this new generation of leaders up there who are governing like they campaign like Darrell Issa, Trey Gowdy. These guys from all across the country who are tired of the status quo. They're tired of the old way of politics, business as usual. They're up there because they see that if we keep going down the path we're going, our country, we're going to lose the American dream. These programs that we're paying for are not going to be funded. We're going to be passing on this debt to the future generations. And that's why I'm running. I want to preserve the liberties and freedoms that our founders set for our country for all generations. That's their right. That's what we need. And I'll always stand up, whether it's against Republicans or Democrats, to represent the values that we have in Alabama 1 and for my constituents and for our constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Hillyer.
Well, first, as an aside, Daniel is right about what Reince Priebus and company tried to do at the convention. It was wrong. My friend and supporter, Warren Blackwell, is the leader of the fight against Reince Priebus on that. Now, on John Boehner, first of all, the word is he probably isn't going to run for Speaker again, so the question is probably moot. But I'm not going to get up here and pander and say, I'm going to get rid of John Boehner unless we know who's running against him. I have been very disappointed in John Boehner as Speaker in some ways. He also has been a heck of a lot better Speaker than Dennis Hastert was back in the last decade. And you've got to know who would be running before you say whether you're going to vote for or against somebody. That's just common sense. I am inclined to want very strongly new, conservative, effective leadership in the Speaker's chair. But am I going to pledge right now that I'm going to vote against John Boehner if he does run again? No, not until I see who he's running against. And I'll also tell you what, we've got to have somebody there that is going to be able to make sure that Nancy Pelosi doesn't become Speaker and that Nancy Pelosi can't start, even if she's minority leader, can't start blocking good legislation or causing havoc. And you've got to have somebody that understands the process. And John Boehner does understand the process. I want somebody that understands it as well as Boehner, but knows how to work it better than he does. And I'm hoping we find that person.
Ms. James?
Thanks for the question. As everyone has stated up here, I've also been extremely disappointed with Mr. Boehner and his judgments that he's made over the past several months. I've been watching him slowly decline. And once I'm in Congress, I vow to vote for someone else who's going to stand up and be tough on these issues and not say in one breath that he supports what the president's doing when he knows it's completely wrong for our country, and then another breath oppose that view. We need someone who's not going to flip-flop on the issues, who's going to stand strong for our conservative values, and we need to stop as a Republican Party shooting our own selves in the foot and get behind a good, solid, conservative leader, and we need a new Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powe?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely not. I am so tired of conservatives acting like they're not conservatives. If he's a conservative, he should act like a conservative, and that's what I'm for. Now, Byrne has done some things that I do appreciate. I appreciate him splitting the vote with the food stamps and the farmers. That's to be commended, but he gets an F. Thank you.
I haven't been in Washington, but my impressions from the outsider is that the individuals, Mr. Boehner seems to be antagonistic, and he lacks diplomacy in my mind. He, right now, he's working in Washington, trying to get the White House wording so he can get the Republican Party to back the policy on Syria, and he's not standing for the Republicans. He relies on doing anything his lobbyists will, and buddies and campaign contributors make him beholden to them and get the job done. He's just the glad handing, and I know out of several hundred Republicans in Congress, that I sure would think that one could improve over what we have at the present time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Several of you mentioned Syria, and that's the topic of our next question. Mr. Byrne, you'll go first. We'll move left to right, and this is kind of a fluid situation. But the question that we have here is the President apparently plans to ask Congress for authorization of military action in Syria. Given what you know today, would you vote yes or no on his request, and why? And Mr. Byrne, you're first.
I would vote no. I believe the President has made a case to the people of the United States that we should put a single penny of the taxpayers' money into some sort of strike in Syria. And I certainly don't think we should put a single serviceman or woman's life on the line. We don't have a policy in the Middle East, and that's what's missing here. We've tried to appease the very worst of the people in the Middle East in this administration, and look where it's gotten us. We've tried to go up and make friends with the thugs that run Iran, and it's bit us. We've tried to make friends with the worst terrorists in the Middle East, and it's biggest. And we've tried to make friends with the so-called president of the Soviet Union, Russia, Putin, who's put it right back at the president. We need a foreign policy in this country, in the Middle East, and around the world that will stand up for America and America's interests, and we're not doing that now. But I don't want to take any of our money or any of our precious lives in this country and waste them in the Middle East where we don't know what we're doing or why we're doing it. The next president of the United States, who will be a Republican, needs to give us a better foreign policy. But I will not support the foreign policy of this president so long as he continues to do what he's doing in weakening this country.
Mr. Dyas, return.
I thank you all for coming here tonight and not staying home and watching the president lie to our country. Every time he speaks, I assume that he's being dishonest. And it's, I tried to have confidence in him when he was first inaugurated, but his track record has proven unworthy of our trust. I believe that intervening in Syria would be absolutely foolhardy. That would be a terrible decision for our country. Our foreign policy is undefined, really. We're going about this in a haphazard way. I don't think Barack Obama is competent to be commander-in-chief. That's the problem that we have, and he's got a reactionist foreign policy. I don't believe we should intervene. Bashar al-Assad has allegedly used chemical weapons against the people in Syria. I'm not privy to what is the classified intelligence that's made available to the men and women in Congress right now, but my first impression, knowing what I know, I do not think we should intervene. I think we should have a more non-interventionist policy. There is an international treaty against the use of chemical weapons, and the enforcement of that treaty is the responsibility of the UN. If the UN wants to lead that charge, that's why the UN exists. I personally am not a fan of the UN, but they exist, and if they're going to be in existence, if we're going to host them in this country, if we're going to fund them, we need to let them do their job and not take the risk of going into Syria.
Mr. Fincher.
Peter, I would not vote to give the president authority to strike Syria. Our president is not a leader. He's not set a clear objective to the American people of what we're trying to accomplish. He's also not put a timetable in place. And as your next congressman, the president ever approaches Congress and asks me to vote to strike any country, those are the two things that are required. We have to have a crystal clear objective of what's going to be the benefit of our country in getting involved in these Middle East conflicts. The people that hate us, don't forget, they hate us, but we're always getting involved in their conflicts. Also a timetable. I do not want to get our country involved in wars and conflicts that goes on for years upon years, and there's no clear timetable. If we're going to put our men and women in harm's way that are making us the greatest country in this world, we're going to have a clear objective, and we're going to have a very specific timetable before I'd ever support any type of action. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you. I would not support military intervention in Syria. Right now, the facts are limited. The American people, we don't know what's going on. We don't have access to the classified information. We have Assad on one side and Al-Qaeda on the other. They're both enemies of ours. We can't go around being the world police. We've got to get our priorities in order here in the United States. We have people that are starving. Our veterans aren't getting the benefits that they were promised, and that's where we need to be focused on. But again, I would not support any kind of intervention in Syria. And I guess I have more time. I'd like to talk more a little bit there, yes. This has all come about because of the failed leadership of President Obama. This has been going on for over a year, 100,000 dead. The loss of life is a tragedy, and I hate that. But if the president had a strong Middle East policy, this would have been avoidable. So again, I wouldn't support military intervention in Syria.
Thanks, Mr. Griffith. Mr. Hillyer, your turn.
The short answer is right now, I would say no. The second thing to say is that I do support a very strong defense force, very sparingly used. There's a template you should always use when assessing whether or not the United States should use force. and it was enunciated by Ronald Reagan's Defense Secretary, Caspar Weinberger, in 1984. And it was a 5 or 6 part test about whether or not we should use military force. First of all, it has to be in the American national interest. Second of all, you have to have a clearly defined objective. So far, we have no clearly defined objective. Thirdly, you have to be sure you've got clearly overwhelming enough force to get the job done, and at least a very clear idea of what the desired end game is. Lastly, next you need to have fairly strong and clear public support for going in. And lastly, you should go in only if all other options have been exhausted. Now, this does not apply if there's an emergency situation, but we've been thinking about this for a year, so this is not an emergency. Therefore, the Reagan-Weinberger doctrine should apply. That's what we should apply just about any time we consider force. In this case, those tests have not been met. Unless and until they are met, I will oppose it.
Thanks, Mr. Hillyer. Ms. James, your turn.
I oppose going into Syria, period. It is a civil war. We have no business there. And while the tragedies of all the deaths that have happened, with or without chemical warfare, it's awful. But we, as Will said, we do have to stop being the world police. We have to protect our own borders. And, if we think about it, Congress does control the purse strings of the country, correct? So how are we going to fund this war when we are trillions in debt to China? Secondly, if we go over there and strike without a clear objective as to what we're going to benefit from, then how in the world do we not know that someone's not going to strike us? And when we're off defending other countries, who's defending our borders? Who's keeping Americans safe? And that's what our founding fathers wanted us to do when they created the Constitution, was to defend and protect the citizens of this country. And that's what we have to do first and foremost. We do not need to be putting our servicemen and women in harm's way and having their lives be lost when we have no reason to be there in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James. Ms. Powe?
The answer is no. I do not believe America should intercede. I believe we are a country of peace, and that foremost, we are leading the principles of Christians when we exercise them. I believe that as Christians, we seek peace first. If we need to go in, we will go in. But we've already been in a war that our intelligence said was of weapons of mass destruction. We do not need to forsake any other lives under that auspice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thornton?
I've stated before that we should not absolutely go into Syria at the present time. Oftentimes in my lifetime we've gone into conflicts, war, too many times without thinking of what the consequences are. We've gotten stuck in there without an exit strategy. Only a couple times we've done it properly. Right now, the situation in Syria is going on for years. We need to always examine as we go along and have diplomacy. And another thing is we have to quit using our National Guard as our main force for defense. If we need military, we have to understand that we'll have to support a larger contingent of full-time people instead of taking them from the National Guard where it was not intended for a full-time force. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Young, you're the last one to go here on the question of Syria.
A year ago tomorrow, we had 4 people killed in Benghazi. We had the President of the United States look into the TV camera and tell us that it was because of a Muslim video. And they knew it wasn't because of a Muslim video. And not only him, but the Secretary of State did it, all the way down, and y'all know about the Sunday talk shows. And what we've got here is we have a credibility problem with this President and this administration. If this guy wants us to believe him and walk into a war, then we would be foolish to do that. I would not go into war because what Barack Obama has said, and I would not give him the authority to do that. We have to watch what we're doing with this president. It all goes back to my platform, which is we've lost our moral compass in this nation. We've gotten to a point where our leaders think it's okay to lie to us, okay to mislead us. And if we don't send someone to Washington that's going to stand up for the godly principles that made this nation great, and truth and honesty are a couple of them, then we're wasting our time. We're wasting our time. Because we've got a federal government that's completely out of control. This is just one example. And the last thing we need to do is allow this president to go in and start a war with people when we don't know what's going on. And I've said it, and I think most of the people up here have said it. It needs to go to the Congress. They need the full story of just exactly what's happening so they can decide what needs to be done, just like the Constitution says. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. We'll move on to our next question. Mr. Dyas, you'll go first on this one. If you had 1 hour alone with the president, what would you talk to him about? What issues and concerns would you address?
Goodness gracious. You know, Benghazi, that's a big one. There's a big, there's still a big question mark about why we didn't support our people in Benghazi. Our embassy came under attack there in Libya, and our military didn't respond. We lost 4 Americans. We lost an ambassador. That's an embarrassment to our country. It's a serious blow to our foreign policy. It's a serious blow to our standing on the international stage. Another thing I would talk to him about is life. I believe that I wrote President Obama a message when he was inaugurated to the White House website, whatever it is, however you do that at whitehouse.gov. And I asked him to humble himself and be real honest with himself about the beginnings of life and when life really begins. Because I think if we're all really honest with ourselves, we know that it begins in the womb and it begins at conception. And there's a tremendous tragedy taking place in our country right now. And I think if President Obama and many other Americans would humble themselves and acknowledge that they may not be right on this, I think that we would be able to change this policy. And this policy, I believe, is a scourge on our country right now. And until we change that, we're going to have a hard time overcoming a lot of other problems we're facing.
Mr. Fincher.
I'm afraid that might be a long hour with the president if I had the opportunity to speak with him. And if that opportunity happens, I think, we might have a little trouble finding a common ground to carry a conversation on. But thinking about that, the president has 2 daughters. I have 2 children. I have a 13-year-old daughter and an almost 3-year-old son. And I think I would have to ask the president about his children and about what type of future does he see this America for them. Because I would have a different picture of the type of America that I see for my children. I'm truly concerned about what direction this country is going and what we are leaving our children, what type of country they might inherit. With a $17 trillion debt that continues to rise, we see no hope of turning around. I can't see how he could give me a good reason how his children's future is going to be brighter than mine unless we seriously make some changes in the very near future. So I would enjoy having that opportunity with the president because I want to stress to him like I stress to everybody on the campaign trail. I'm running for Congress because of the concern I have for my children and your children about what type of future this country looks like. And I want to be a part of the change to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith, your turn.
That hour wouldn't be spent on the golf course, I promise you that. There'd be a lot to talk about with it. I know we don't agree on most of the issues, but I'd first start off with just spending. We had to find some middle ground. The spending levels, when he's been president, he's had the highest deficits in the history of our country. 5 of the highest deficits in the history of our country. We've got to get spending under control. We've got to do right for our veterans. We've got to help people get back to work. We've got to teach them how to fish so they can eat for a lifetime, not give them the fish. Alabama is one of 35 states where you can make more money on food stamps and welfare than you can in a minimum wage, entry-level job. That's a problem. We've got to encourage hard work and ingenuity. We need people out there working for their families. We've got to have strong families. We've got to have our Christian conservative values. And I want to have a conversation with President Obama about that. We don't need Chicago-style politics. We got to come together as a country. We have about 13 years, 2026, Medicare will be bankrupt. That's an earned benefit. People have paid into that system, into that program. We've got to protect it for all seniors. Social Security will be bankrupt in 2033. Again, those are earned benefits. We're at a crossroads in our country. If we keep going down the spending levels we are right now, we're going to have a hard decision to make. Are we going to pay European level taxes, or are we going to cut benefits that have been promised and earned? And that's what I would want to talk to the President about, make sure we get our country back on track.
Thank you, Mr. Hillyer. Your turn.
First, I want to know what horrible thing I did that you would want to punish me by making me spend an hour with the President. I hate to say it, I find him distasteful because I haven't ever seen any indication that he listens to anybody that is anywhere to the right of far left. But that said, I was trying to think what we could somehow find to talk about that might be productive. I kept checking things off the list and thinking, no, he wouldn't even listen on that. But there might be one, and it's my proposal to deal with veterans. I was a Reagan appointee. My first job out of college is the Veterans Administration, so I've been interested in veterans issues for a long time. And what I want to know is why our veterans have to go for care to a veterans hospital, even if it's 80 or 100 miles away. And I would like to talk to him about my proposal. This is something he might actually go for, to provide veterans with something similar to a Medicare card, so they could go to whatever hospital is nearest them for the care, and then have it charged back to the VA, so they don't have to travel 80 or 100 miles. And I've got nothing against having veterans hospitals, but if you're not near one, our vets should be able to get the care near where they are. It would be cheaper and more efficient, and that is something I might actually be able to convince them to do. So there's one productive, constructive idea.
Thanks, Mr. Hillyer. Ms. James, your turn.
It would definitely be an interesting hour spending with President Obama. I guess we'd talk about his golf game and about all of his vacations that he's had with his lovely family since he's been in office, more than I've ever remembered any president doing, and how he could enjoy those vacations with his family when the rest of us are struggling to make ends meet and to keep our budgets balanced. I guess I'd talk to him about Obama phones and Obamacare and Obama Ed and how many more Obama-esque policies he's going to pass before he leaves office and destroys our country. You know, how many more things is he going to name after himself to destroy us? I want to ask him if he really realized that he was a leader of the greatest country in the world, greatest country on earth, and where his faith is in all of this. Does he pray to God every night to give him the strength and courage and wisdom to lead this divine country? Or is he just going free-handed at it and trying to name as many things after himself as he can to destroy our country while he's playing golf and taking vacations? It would be a very interesting hour, and from what I've asked of him, what I would say of him, would probably be him talking at me and trying to hypnotize me and getting me to believe in him. So it would be a very frustrating hour for me, as you can tell. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powe?
Question. But I think our subject would be liberation. And I would tell him something like God told the children of Israel, like he told Pharaoh, let my people go. Because whether we realize it or not, wealth is created. And you don't help a people by handout. You help a people by hand up. I would tell you that if you really want a people to be empowered, we need to make sure we create wealth. Because if you want to make sure that they are mentally, physically, and emotionally strong, you don't just keep giving them. You make sure they earn what they get. You make sure that the economy gets strong. And if you go ahead and push for job training, we can get the country back on track. You don't have to keep giving them a handout, because they can help support this country. President Obama, let's liberate all of the people, all of the time, no exceptions. no exclusions. Thank you.
I would like to ask him how to justify the people he has within his cabinet. Examine each one. Ronald Reagan was great because he had a great cabinet. I'd ask him to justify it. Also justify examples like how you can sell Carolyn Kennedy to Japan, can't speak a word of English. I mean, word of Japanese. Hopefully she speaks English. But, so I just like to reason with him if possible. I get the impression the guy is intelligent, but if he's not able to listen like Quin had said, I'm maybe just talking to a wall. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Young.
This is a very interesting question, and I thought about it, started down there. The way I view Barack Obama is I view him as someone who's systematically destroying this nation. And I see him almost as an enemy of the things that I believe in. The free enterprise system, the family, businesses. And so the talk would not be too productive, because the talk would end up being me telling him that I do believe that we have a Christian nation, and that he's gone out of his way to destroy that, and that I would do everything I could do to make sure he fails at what he's doing. And that would be the end of the talk, really. Now, we could talk about it for 30 minutes or an hour, but it'd be real clear to him where I stand, just like it is to you right now. Because I view him as someone who is systematically dismantling this great nation that we live in. And somebody needs to go up there and say something to him. There won't be any compromise with me. I don't have much to say to him because, like I said earlier, I don't believe what he says. So there's no trust factor. But it would be, he would understand where I stood because I would be crystal clear. I know where he stands because I've watched him. This is the 5th year I've watched him do this for our nation. And that's what the conversation would go like.
Thank you. Mr. Byrne?
I wouldn't go by myself. I would take some people with me. The first person I would take with me is a business owner from right here in West Mobile, whose business is about to be shut down by an agency of the federal government. They'll not only put this man out of business, but will put 30 to 40 people out of work. I'll take with me the couple that Rebecca and I met in Brooklyn the other day, who told me that they cannot afford health insurance and they're about to have to pay a penalty to their government because they can't afford health insurance. I would take the young man I met today in Foley, who wants a full-time job and can't get a full-time job because the places he goes to seek employment don't want to hire people full-time because of Obamacare. And I would take the man that I met just last week in Sims, who told me that he's got a nephew who's on his 5th tour in Afghanistan, and say, Mr. President, these are the people of the 1st Congressional District. These are the people of America. These are the people that you and your administration are failing. And maybe if he'll look them in the eye, not a congressman, not another person that he just sees as somebody as his adversary, but real people, people whose lives are being affected every day by the mistakes that he's making, maybe, just maybe we can bring him around. I know the good people of this district have enough to do it. Thank you.
Our next question, and Mr. Fincher, you go first on this one. By all accounts, America has more than 10 million illegal aliens. A substantial portion apparently came here on legal visas or as a student, then overstayed their time and are now here illegally. The rest entered the country illegally. What's your position on immigration reform, and do you see any distinction between those two groups?
Well, illegal immigration, I can clearly say, you can clearly see my record where I stand on this issue, because Alabama has been one of the few states that's taken that issue head on. Our federal government and our president has ignored our illegal immigration laws that we have in place right now. They're not enforcing them. So our state has had to step up like other states and said, we're going to enact laws that should be in place by our federal government that they're ignoring to take control of our illegal immigration issue. Now, you can't build a border fence long enough, high enough, or tall enough
to really stop all the illegals from coming across our border. There has to be more to it than just a fence or a structure. You have to hold the individual accountable. You have to hold the individuals accountable that are causing the individual, those to come over, that incentive to come across the line to work here. These are individuals that are paying those illegal workers cash, under the table, no documents, no records. That has to stop. We have to hold those businesses accountable for that and have stiff penalties. But we also, there is a labor force out there that depend on workers, that are migrant workers, that come to this country to work and to provide the jobs, that they cannot find other people to work those jobs because of a system that we have in place in this country that provides the services, the subsidies, that person rather than sit on at the house rather than go work in the field. So we have to make sure that if you're here illegally, we hold you accountable. But if you're coming across the border to work as a migrant worker, that we can provide those opportunities for those industries and those businesses to keep those jobs in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you. I'm against the Senate bill and I'm opposed to amnesty. We've got to secure our borders and enforce the laws that are already in the books. America is the greatest country in the world. This country was built on legal immigration and legal immigrants. All of our ancestors came from other countries. We need to make a way for people to come over here legally. But we can't do it through amnesty, and we've got to do it. Everybody that's here illegally right now, they've got to go to the back of the line. They've got to learn English. They have to pay back in current taxes. This is America, the land of the free, built on immigrants, and we've got to keep that American dream alive. Right now, if we grant amnesty, it doesn't solve the problem. Like I said earlier, we are one of 35 states that have more, you can make more money not working than you can working. It's not going to take, if we grant amnesty to 10 million people, it's not going to take long to figure out the system. We've got to reward hard work and ingenuity and keep our country great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hillyer.
There is not a single bill that could be bad enough that Barack Obama would sign that would be acceptable enough for us to pass. So we're just spinning our wheels. I would hold off on all major immigration reform until we have a new president. That's the first thing. We are spinning our wheels and wasting our time because he is so far to the left on this that that we just cannot get a bill that he will sign that is anywhere near something acceptable. But in the meantime, we can do something about legal immigration. One reason we have so many illegals is because the legal immigration system is so messed up. We need to fix the bureaucracy at the INS so people who do want to come here legally don't have to run into so much bureaucratic rigmarole. And we need to, especially for skilled workers and H-1B visas, make it easier for those people to come in. And yes, we also need to discourage the ones that are already here. Mitt Romney should not have gotten in trouble for talking about wanting them to self-deport. That's actually what happens seasonally all the time. And if we cut off the flow of freebies to the ones that are coming here not to work, but to freeload, then they will self-deport. So that's a start, and then once we get to a new president, we can attack the bigger problem.
Okay, thank you. Ms. James?
We do not need to pass any more laws in regards to immigration. We need to uphold the laws that we currently have on the books. That 700-mile fence, we need to continue to build that, get that thing finished, and secure our borders. There's a proper and legal way to be in our country. All of our ancestors did that same thing, and that's what made Ellis Island so wonderful. It's because we had a place to come legally into this country. We need to cut back the bureaucracy, make time for those who are here illegally to become legal citizens. There's a proper way to do it, and make it easier for them to do that. Those who are here on expired student or working visas, they need to have those renewed, or they need to go home. We don't need any more illegal citizens in this country getting handouts and becoming part of our entitlement program system and working off those of us who believe in personal responsibility and are here and doing things the right way. I don't believe in anchor babies. I know the Alabama Federation of Republican Women took this on a couple of years ago. And that's where children are born from illegal immigrants into our country, and they become citizens by being born on our soil. And the parents stay to take care of those children. It's not the child's fault that the parents came here illegally, and that they have to be here the proper way too. So I do not believe in creating any more laws. I do not believe in amnesty, and we need to secure our borders and do things the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powe?
We need to enforce the laws that we already have on the books. Our southern and northern borders need to be closed. We need to make sure that our borders are always secure. Because we are a nation of immigrants, we need to also make sure that the road to citizenship is at least obtainable, but that's once we make sure that they do want to become citizens. But they should not just be allowed to just stay here and be a burden on the citizens that are here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thornton?
First, we need to secure our borders, but also we need to have a little diplomacy with the country to the south of us that is causing a lot of the problem and why people are leaving that area to come to this country. We're a land of opportunity, but they're not that far away. They could be a land of opportunity, but because of their government, it hinders what the people can do there, and they come this way. So we work with diplomacy along securing borders. We can reduce the inflow and have the illegals come to this country.
Thank you. Mr. Young?
Illegal immigration. There you go. What is that? It's illegal. So it's real simple. We catch the people that are over here illegally. We use the laws that are on the books. If that means deporting them, then it does. You send them back. These anchor babies, when they come over here and have a baby, the baby has to stay with his mom and daddy. And we take those people home. We build the borders. We secure our borders. And it's something that can be done. It's not like it's an unattainable thing. My goodness, we sent men to the moon. So we can do this if we send people up there that mean business and want to get something done. And again, that goes back, who are you going to send? Who are you going to send? Who do you believe will really go up there and take some of this common sense, basic stuff and do it? And that's the question you're going to have to answer 2 weeks from tonight. And it's very basic stuff. I could take the people in this room. We could go from this room right now to Washington. And we could do a much better job than what's going on up there. It's that simple. But we've got to start sending people that just have some basic common sense and will do what they say they're going to do. They're not lifelong politicians. They're not going just to become I'm going to be a congressman, so you can say, hey, there's Mr. Congressman. They're going up there because they genuinely care about our country and they want to do something about it. And that's what it's going to take. You guys have 2 weeks to decide what kind of person you want to send. And if that person is telling you the truth, I mean, I think it's a clear choice. But you guys have 2 weeks to make it. Thank you.
Mr. Byrne?
I stand with Senator Jeff Sessions on this issue. The Senate bill is not acceptable. And I stand with the members of the House that are trying to take that bill apart, take that issue apart, piece by piece, and pass it component by component. The first thing we need to do in immigration is protect our borders, and we're not doing that, and we've got to do that. Secondly, we've got to provide for our internal security. A year ago tomorrow, not only did we have the terrible event in Benghazi, we did something almost as bad. We naturalized in Boston, Massachusetts, Johar Zarnev, who 7 months later with his brother committed the horrible atrocity of the Boston bombings. Why? Because he has said, he has confessed, because he wanted to get retribution against the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. Our immigration system let that happen. There's something wrong with an immigration system that does that, and that law has to be changed. Worst of all, we have thousands of people in this district who came to this country legally and went through the long and arduous process of becoming citizens of our great country legally. We dishonor them in what they've done to become a part of us when we let other people jump ahead of them in line, disobey the law, and take advantage of the fruits of our great country. I will never let people do that. I will always stand with the citizens of this country who've done everything by the book.
Thank you. Mr. Dyas?
I think it's very clear that our immigration policy is broken. We've got unprecedented numbers of illegal immigrants, undocumented workers, call them what you want to call them. We don't even know who they are. It's a huge national security risk. And we have got to do something, and we've got to do something now. I think what we need to do is send some statesmen to Washington who won't take part in this demagoguery and the politics as usual. The partisanship in Washington has reached a fever pitch. I think we've got to send people who can work between the aisle and work with people on both sides of the aisle. It's clear that we need immigration reform, in my opinion. We have millions of people here who we don't know who they are. So what I would suggest we do is we open a brief period of time and tell anybody who is here, make it very clear publicly that they need to make themselves known. We need to know who is here, and if they show up after that time is ended, I suggest perhaps a month, something very brief, because once you open that window, the floodgates are going to open across the border. Something very brief. Once that happens, if somebody shows up after the fact that hasn't put their name on the line and said that they want to become a citizen of this country, be a taxpayer and a law-abiding part of this community, our country, then we send them home. For those people who come forth out of the shadows, we need a good solution. Immigration is a part of our country's heritage. I think it should be encouraged. It's difficult and bureaucratic, just like everything else the federal government touches right now, and it needs reform.
Thanks, Mr. Dyas. Working on it in, and Mr. Griffith, you go first. Other than any members of the Alabama delegation, name members of the House or Senate who you see as a role model and why. And again, let's go 30 seconds on this one, please.
There's a lot of Paul Ryan is a friend of mine. I don't agree with him on every issue, but I like him because he's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in. I'd look to him the most. But I also know Jason Chaffetz in Utah. I helped Stephen Palazzo in Mississippi. I've got to know a lot of these younger leaders who are willing to stand up and fight. We're having a problem up in Washington. A lot of the old guys, not an age thing, but the guys that have been up there for a long time, business as usual, keep it up with the status quo. We need people who are going to go up there and fix our country and get things back to on track.
Thank you. Mr. Hillyer?
I could say a household name, but I'm not, because I'm going to say somebody who has the position, who has earned the position of trust. Steve Scalise from Louisiana is the head of the Republican Study Committee, which is the conservative caucus within the Republican Conference. He got there for a reason, because he is a leader among the young conservatives. Y'all might not have heard of him, but he's got that position because he earned it, because he stands up for conservative values. He has endorsed me. He is my friend, and I would strive to work with him.
Thank you very much. Ms. James, you're next.
There are too many to name, but among some of my favorites have been former Congressman Allen West, Trey Gowdy, Ted Cruz, people that just have conservative common sense, and they're no nonsense, and they stand up for what's right for our country, and they're tough. And that's the kind of person I would strive to be, and that's the type of role model I would have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Powe?
I think Ted Cruz out of Texas, and I think because he's a stand-up man, and I think he's been very forceful, and he stood for what is right as far as the conservative values are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thornton?
It would probably be Bobby Jindal of Louisiana, one I'd probably be the one I'd most admire.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Young?
It would be Ted Cruz. He's a plain-spoken man. He's got the same principles that we have. I think he does a great job up there. And if I get to go up there, I hope to be like Ted Cruz, but only in the House. Right now, I can't name one House member that I would admire. I'm sure there may be some, but I just don't know who they are. And that's a shame. That's a shame. But I've got 2 weeks. If I get to go up there, I promise you'll be hearing from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Byrne, your turn.
Well, one of the great things about the Republican Party is that we have a large number of great leaders in the House and in the Senate. And I hesitate to single out any one because you can pick any one and find a weakness or strength in them, etc. The great thing about the Republican Party is that we have this diversity of leaders. They come from different backgrounds, they come from different states, but they come with a similar viewpoint about what has to happen in government. We've got to get government back within its bounds. And we've got to find leaders in our party who are willing to stand up and stand up strong to make sure we do that. We've got to find people in the House and the Senate to do that. And I believe that those people are there in the Republican Party. Look forward to working with them.
Thank you, Mr. Dyas.
I'm a Tea Party guy. I've hosted tea parties, participated in tea parties since they started back on April 15th of 2009. So I joined the Tea Party caucus right when I got to town. That's one thing I do. Darrell Issa, I like Darrell Issa a lot. I think he's gotten more traction against the Obama agenda than anybody in Washington. I met him on the floor of the convention. I told him I wished he was our vice presidential nominee. I think we might have won the presidency if we had him on the ticket. So Darrell Issa would be my man.
Thank you. And Mr. Fincher?
Well, Peter, I don't think it's fair because you left out some of the best representatives we have in this country, our Alabama delegation. So I just want to mention I'm so glad to have Senator Jeff Sessions as my representative. I hope you are too. Outside of Alabama, Congressman Palazzo, that Wells mentioned, the reason I mentioned him because I've been looking into his stance on insurance reform. I'm the only candidate up here that's ever dealt with insurance reform when it's coming to deal with your the rate you're paying in your homeowner's insurance, and that's an issue not only facing Alabama, but it's also facing Mississippi and all over the Gulf Coast. And Congressman Palazzo is already dealing with that, and look forward to get the opportunity to work with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fincher. And this will be our last question now before our closing statements. We'll go back to a minute and a half for this one. And Mr. Hillyer, you're going to go first. And the question is, your election to Congress would make you one of the lowest ranking members, but representing one of the safest Republican seats in the nation. Assuming you are re-elected for several terms, what committee assignments are you interested in, and where do you see yourself in the leadership of the House? And again, Mr. Hillyer, you're first.
Well, it helps if you're going to be 435th out of 435 in seniority. It helps if you can go up there and have a voice among the top 25 or 30. And I can go up there and do that because I've been on Fox News 9 or 10 times, been on CNN, been on MSNBC, been on just about every national talk radio show there is. So these people know me, like me, respect me, and I can give a voice to Southern Alabama. And because I can do that, I might have a chance of getting my way on some important committees a little more quickly. I served for 5 years in the House, or 2 years, on the staff of the House Appropriations Committee when we cut $50 billion in actual spending, setting the stage for the balanced budget. I would probably be therefore best positioned to get on the Appropriations Committee more quickly than just about anybody up here because I've got that experience on approps. But since no freshman is likely to get on approps in the first term, I would go to the Judiciary Committee because I have written again and again and again on fights over judges, on court cases, and on corruption in the current Justice Department. I have been very, very strong from day one against Eric Holder. I've got a long record of breaking stories that embarrassed Eric Holder, and I want to go and hold hearings that continue to expose the corruption of the Obama Justice Department. So, judiciary first, but to lead to appropriations very, very quickly.
Thank you very much. Ms. James?
The very first committee I would seek to be a part of would be the Education Committee, and that would be because I would want to dismantle it. As soon as possible, we need to get rid of the Federal Department of Education, and it would be my wish, as being on that committee, to have that done. We don't need a Federal Department of Education. We do need an Office of Education, but my first committee assignment, I would hope, would be education. Secondly, I would love to be on a committee that would work with Veterans Affairs. We need to handle our veterans' issues, and the backlog of veterans services that we have in this country right now needs to be addressed. So firstly, education, second, Veterans Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powe?
Thank you. I would like to be on the Appropriations Committee. The reason is because on my platform, I want job training here. Appropriations will provide that for this district. Right now, our unemployment rate is 9.1. That means that we need job training. The jobs are here, We need job training. We need some funds to come in to make sure that we get a jump start. If not that committee, then of course Veterans Affairs, because I am pushing that our veterans not struggle as they have been. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Thornton?
As a new member, you have very little choice of which committee you're on. I'd like to be on one of the appropriation committees also, and it's for the same reason, to have a certain amount of control over the spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Young, your turn.
Yes, sir. The Appropriations Committee would be a great thing to be on. I'd love to be on that. The Judiciary Committee would be good. Listen, I'm not going up there, I'll tell you now, I'm going up there and I'm going to stand for the issues that I'm telling you I'm going to stand for. I'm not going to go up there and negotiate away the principles that made this country great, just so somebody will put me on a committee or a better committee. And you say, well, what do you do about that? How's that going to work? Well, I'll tell you how it works. Ted Cruz, a lot of you know who that is. I just talked about him. He's only been there since January. It's not because he went in there and compromised and moved this way and moved that way. He's there because he's taking a stand, and people have to listen to him. And that's what I aim to do. I'm not going up there to compromise away my beliefs or anything. I'm going up there to stand for what I'm telling you I'm going to stand for. And it'll come because the nation is thirsty and the nation is hungry for those types of leaders.
Thank you. Mr. Byrne?
I'm going to be on the committee that's going to protect the 4,000 jobs that we have at Austin that are subject to a Navy contract that's under threat right now. I want to be on the committee that's going to get us 2 more spans of Interstate 10 across Mobile Bay, the biggest choke point, the Interstate 10 system between Jacksonville and Los Angeles. I want to be on the committee that's going to enable us to deepen our ship channel and get a better turn basin so we can take advantage of the new ships that are coming through the Panama Canal. I want to be on the committee so I can serve the tens of thousands of veterans in this area who have been ill-served by our federal government. And I want to be on the committee that can do away and take the power away from some faceless bureaucrats that tell us when and how and where we get to catch fish. It is time for us to take back control of our government and make sure that we're doing the right things for the people of this district. And I'll serve on whatever committees I need to make sure we do that.
Thank you. Mr. Dyas, your turn.
Some of these responses are pretty impressively scripted, I tell you. I want to be on I'd like to be on the Defense Committee. I'd like to be on the Appropriations Committee. I'd like to do a lot of the things that Bradley just mentioned. You know, I mean, we need to protect our interests in the first congressional district, no doubt. But the first and foremost priority is this right here, the United States Constitution, the foundation upon which this country was built. We've deviated from it. We've got to get back to it. The federal government has been built and built and built way beyond the foundation. And as a builder, I understand that when you build outside the foundation, something's going to fail. It's time that we get back to the founding principles of this country. We need to send somebody up there that will respect the Constitution and the founding of this country first. And then we'll worry about what committees we get on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fincher?
Yes, I think in the point of the part of service as being a part of committees is something that you can relate to so that you can be an important part of. And the first committee I'd ask to be a part of is agriculture. And the reason I say that is agriculture and forestry is still the #1 industry in this state. We like to talk about airplanes and steel mills and all those things that are great in technology, which is great for this area, and we're so blessed. But I can't forget about how important where my roots come from, and that's agriculture. And I want to be a part of the Agriculture Committee. My experience goes back, I currently serve as your House Chairman of the House Ag and Forestry Committee, the Agriculture and Forestry Committee. I'm proud to represent the farmers and the foresters all across, and the landowners all across the state in that position. I've also been very fortunate to be endorsed by the Alabama Forestry Association for this position, because they know how important it is that we protect our landowners and our forestry interests in this state because of the economic boost it provides. The other part of the committee I'd like to be on that doesn't exist is we need a budget committee in Washington. I also serve on the budget committee in Alabama, and we've had to make the tough decisions of cutting spending time and time again to live within a budget. It is about time that we make Washington do the very same thing and live within a budget. I want to be on that budget committee. We can make the spending cuts so we can rein in spending and live within our means here in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Griffith, you're the last one on this question.
I've never run for office before. My last job, I traveled to almost 50 states, fighting to elect new leaders, new conservatives all over the country. I got to know a lot of them. I got to be friends with them in their districts. I helped them get elected. I'll be able to hit the ground running up in Washington. Paul Ryan's a good friend of mine. We found a lot of commonalities. We both like to hunt and fish. We both care about our country. I rode around with Alan West in his H3 Hummer through Florida. He's not there anymore. But there are a lot of these new leaders up there who are really getting things done, and their numbers are growing. And I want to be on Ways and Means Committee. Paul Ryan's about to be the ranking member and the chairman. They oversee the tax code, which is over 74,000 pages. The IRS is only going to get bigger with Obamacare. That's where I want to be first. Ways and Means has become the new power committee. Appropriations used to be where everything happened. They still appropriate money, but with the pork reforms they've made, it's not as powerful as it used to be. The other committee I like, it would be there's a lot of them. Transportation. We've got to invest in our infrastructure in the South Alabama. We've got to connect the northern counties to the more populated counties down here in Mobile and Baldwin. Those are shovel-ready jobs. We've got to get an I-10. We need an I-10 bridge to help the flow of traffic and to support the industry that's down here. We have Austal's great toured the facilities today. We have Airbus here. We're going to continue to bring in suppliers. We have to have the infrastructure to support the business and the opportunities here in South Alabama.
Thanks, Mr. Griffith. We're going to reach the time now for your closing statements. Again, each candidate has 1 minute, and we'll start with Ms. James.